Hello, friends. Welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery. So this morning we will be looking at the Saddha Sutta. So in the comments you will find a link to a translation from Sutta Central, from actually two translations from Sutta Central. One is from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi and one from Bhante Sujato. But I will be reading from my own translation, so you can see the differences and similarities, if there are any. Actually, there will probably be many. And good to see you, Geeta, Sud, Jayanta, Miriam, and everyone else who hasn't checked in yet, but I see as a little number on the screen. So before we begin, we can start by paying homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, the reason why we're gathered here today. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhuttam dhammam sangham namasami. So the Saddha Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 538, starts with the Buddha saying, there are these 5 things, monastics, that are of benefit to faithful, honorable people. What are these 5? When the good people in the world have compassion, they have compassion first for the one with faith, not the one without faith. So I'll start by sharing a few comments as we are reading the sutta. So we see, first of all, of course, that the Buddha essentially says, well, starts enumerating 5 things that are incredibly of benefit to us when we nurture faith. And this can be applied in this particular context to lay people. And in this particular context, to see what is actually the immediate benefit that we get by cultivating faith, by cultivating Saddha. One of the powers that the Buddha says that we need to essentially cultivate. And most of you are already familiar with the 5 powers that sometimes become also 7 powers. So the power of faith, obviously, so the power of Saddha. Then there's also the power of Sati, which is the power of mindfulness, or the power of Samadhi, that can be translated as concentration. Then the power of Panya, that is usually translated as wisdom. And then the 2 extra ones are the powers of Hiri and the powers of Ottappa, that are usually translated as fear and dread of doing anything that is harmful, that is non-virtuous, that is, that is breaching the precepts. And so it's important, first and foremost, to perhaps evaluate the type of relationship that we have with faith, especially if we're not born Buddhist. Maybe we don't particularly like the translation of Saddha as faith, and we might have a strong reaction to it. And maybe we might even assess, okay, it's something that I have, or it's something that I don't have, and pretty much faith is this, it's in faith in something that we believe in, or I don't have faith, I don't believe in this. And it's kind of like this sort of statement that perhaps has not much, doesn't require much work, doesn't require much investigation. But instead, when we're thinking about faith as something, as a tool that helps us, as something that actually is a power, we can think of it not as something necessarily that we have or we don't have, but as something that we can either develop or that we have already developed, essentially. And when we think about it in this context, at least it has been very helpful for me to think about it in this context, then we focus more on how can I put the causes and conditions in order to perfect essentially this power, this skill set. And what is the purpose? Why is faith a power or a superpower, actually? Well, it's a superpower because it propels us to put effort in the practice. It propels us actually to develop all the other um, powers as well. So if we think about, for example, an incredible practitioner, an incredible Ajahn, an incredible bhikkhuni or an incredible bhikkhu that we have met, that have really good conduct or speak really good Dhamma. Well, we can be very much inspired. That has happened to me a lot of time. And that is basically the momentum of faith that rises in the mind. And I'm like, okay, let me put some effort in this practice. Let me put some effort in developing mindfulness. Let me put some effort in developing concentration. Let me put effort in developing virtue, and so forth. Emulating perhaps the person that we find particularly inspiring. So we see that it becomes, kind of a sort of springboard that gives us momentum to then develop all those qualities. And of course, then the faith towards the Buddha, our original teacher. Every morning here at Empty Cloud, we recollect the incredible qualities of the Buddha, then the incredible qualities of the Dhamma, and the incredible qualities of the Sangha. Actually, this morning I spent the entire time doing Buddha Nusati. It's just so beautiful. I was recollecting all the different qualities of the Buddha, how awesome the Buddha is, worthy of offerings, because he has perfected every single possible aspect of mind. Someone who has actually the perfect understanding of the world, has perfect knowledge and conduct as well. And knows how to teach every single being. Even if they're not humans, whoever wants to be trained, whoever wants to learn the Dhamma, the Buddha knows exactly what to say to them. Someone who has, perfected their mind all by themselves. This is very humbling when we think, okay, I have the Dhamma and, I'm following the Dhamma, but I'm still not there yet. Whoa, this is so difficult. Even though I have a map, even though I have, step by step what needs to be done. And when just imagining someone who does not have those tools, like Shakyamuni Buddha in this lifetime, that actually not only managed to do the path, but actually discovered it to begin with all by themselves. So the incredible paramis, the incredible perfections of mind that requires to get to that point. So it's so very inspiring, so beautiful to recollect that. But most importantly, that is accessible to us. Most importantly, that is something that is possible, just as long as we dedicate ourselves to it, just as long as we follow the teachings, just as long as we follow the Noble Eightfold Path. And so, of course, the more we think about it, the more we're like, yes, put some effort in developing all Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, all these aspects. Doesn't matter how difficult, how hard, how strenuous this path is. And so when we develop this beautiful faith, that the Buddha says the first thing that happens to us, the first return of investment is that the good people in the world, when they have compassion, they will first have compassion for the ones with faith, not with the one without faith. So here the Buddha is talking about actually monastics. So people who, have dedicated their lives to the path, good monastics that have done all the work, essentially, of purifying the mind, or are on one step ahead of us on the path. In the Anukampa Sutta, the Buddha describes having compassion, like the way that a really good monastic has compassion towards lay people is through 5 different ways. One is by encouraging them in developing virtuous behavior. The second one is by grounding them in Dhamma. Then the third one is establishing them in Sati, so in mindfulness whenever they are ill. Then the fourth one is that whenever there's a large Sangha that is arriving to town, the monastic starts informing all the lay people and tells them, hey, there's a great opportunity to make merit. And then the last one is that they just eat whatever kind of food is given to them, whether it's coarse or exquisite, it doesn't matter, with gratitude. So allowing every single person, whether they're poor or rich, to make offerings to the Sangha. So to partake in this incredible field of merit. So we see that first and foremost, the Buddha says that when we have faith, people who have this type of compassion, of course, they will show it to the ones, who have faith, who have this like incredible superpower. And then he says, when they approach someone, they approach first the one with faith, not the one without faith. And of course, here we see it's quite intuitive. We see that, of course, if there's someone who has faith, there's 2 reasons why they're approached first. First and foremost, because they're actually just pleasant to be around. We have many faithful people that come here at Empty Cloud Monastery, and they're just so delightful to have around, so delightful to associate with, so beautiful to look at, not necessarily because they have perfect physical features, but because they have perfected all these beautiful qualities of mind, beautiful paramis of generosity, of kindness, of reverence, of deference. And so it's just so beautiful, right? And so, of course, then monastics want to associate with people who have those qualities of mind. And also, of course, the people just happen to, out of faith, obviously happen to be around monasteries, happen to be around monastics more often, rather than bars or gambling places or other sorts of different, less idyllic places where to find, or less ideal places where to find the Dhamma. And then when they receive alms, they receive first from the one with faith, not from the one without faith. And this, of course, because someone with faith will be more in tune to give alms to the monastic Sangha. I remember when I first went to Thailand, I went Pindapata with some other monastics, and we were on our way. And at a certain point, this couple, we were kind of like in the middle of nowhere, and this couple was on a scooter and drove by and saw us, and basically they stopped the whatever they were doing, and they returned, probably to go to a shop, to a store or somewhere to find some food, and then came back to find us to give us the offering. And it was just so beautiful, so moving to see how, they were pretty, kind of like in a rush going wherever they had to do that day, but they couldn't miss out on that incredible opportunity to make merit. So that became the foremost in their the highest thing, the most important thing in that time and place. And so they made time for it. And that was just so beautiful to see. Another important thing to actually note about they receive first from the one with faith, not from the one without faith when they receive alms, is how sometimes we might have the wrong view that, if we're lay people, that we're giving food to the monastic sangha and we're basically essentially doing them a favor. Or if we're monastics, maybe we might think that the lay people are doing us a favor to feed us. Maybe we might even get into the sort of mind state, oh, okay, well, it's just so much effort for the lay people to cook all this food that actually I don't even like. I'd rather have this other type of food rather than the food that I've been offered right now, etc., etc. Right? We can be very practical with it. But instead, it's important to reflect actually why, as monastics, we take these precepts. And it is to become this field of merit for lay people, connected to, once again, how the Buddha was saying earlier in the Anukampa Sutta, of how our practice is a practice of gratitude, a practice of contentment, and also a practice of accepting all sorts of food, whether we like it or not, in order to allow as many people as possible from all different social statuses, all different walks of life, to have access to the teachings. Because in fact, as we see, the Buddha says afterwards, when they preach the Dhamma, they preach first to the one with faith, not to the one without faith. So this was quite evident actually in Italy. Whenever people were offering us food, then usually they would also ask us, even though they didn't know who we were, but they were like inspired by the monastic form, the renunciant form. So they would start asking us questions about the teachings of the Buddha. And so we would preach the Dhamma. But we wouldn't just go around to people that weren't offering us anything, not because we wanted something in return, but just because there was no sort of opportunity to do so. But instead, when someone would approach us and ask questions, and make offerings, and they would also ask questions. And then, of course, the conditions to teach the Dhamma would come into fruition. Or if perhaps it wasn't on the moment when they were giving us food offerings, maybe we would encounter them in the afternoon in the village and they would ask us questions. And once again, that was a great opportunity to teach the Dhamma. And of course, here at Empty Cloud Monastery, whenever lay people come and bring offerings, there's always the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. And then the Buddha continues by saying, upon the breakup of the body after death, the faithful is reborn in a happy state, in a heavenly world. And so we see here there is essentially the connection with karma, so the connection with causality. So it's just very simple. Every action has a result. And giving is good. The Buddha is very clear over and over again. There's many reasons why we give, but the Buddha says that each reason pretty much is a good reason and will lead to a good destination. Whether it's because we perhaps give offerings just because giving is good, so we get very much in tune with the physical sensations, physical and mental sensations that generosity brings to the mind. And we're like, wow, giving, it feels really great. Let me keep giving. And yes, that will create the conditions to be reborn, both in this life and in the future life, in a good destination. Because immediately we are happier. Immediately we're in a better sort of state of existence. And also the Buddha says in a future life, when this body will be disintegrated, there will also be a great rebirth. It's the same thing maybe we give just because it's a family tradition, or maybe because we think that the monastics are hungry, so they need someone to feed them. There's so many different reasons why we would give. This being said, the Buddha says that all of these will lead to a good destination. but they will be temporary. But if instead we actually cultivate a mind of giving, understanding that it's a beautiful ornament of mind, that generosity is a beautiful ornament of mind, much better than any type of Chanel bag, any type of makeup, any type of like whatever it is that we do to beautify ourselves. If we think of it, generosity as this beautiful adornment of mind, but that type of generosity actually is an incredible power too, that will lead us towards, instead, the cessation of suffering. It will lead us towards Nibbana. This being said, very important to remember cause and consequence always. So the Buddha is very clear here. Upon the breakup of the body, the faithful is reborn in a happy state in a heavenly world. Also, of course, recollecting Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha is a really pleasant, beautiful state of existence. And then the sutta ends with a beautiful poem. It says, just like monastics in a good place amidst the crossroad, a great banyan tree is a shelter for the birds all around. In the same way, indeed, monastics, the faithful, honorable person is a shelter for many people. Bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas, and upasikas. I love it. The faithful, honorable person is a shelter for many people. So it will host both male and female monastics, and also male and female lay people, lay followers. A big tree endowed with fruit, leaves, and branches, having a big trunk, endowed with root or fruit, is a support for birds. Birds indeed resort to this delightful place. Desiring shade, they proceed to shade. Interested in fruit, they feed on fruit. So essentially, whoever, like all the birds that gravitate towards the tree, they will find all their needs met. And so if they are hungry, they will eat. If they need some shelter or some shade, they will find that. And likewise, the honorable person has perfected virtue, is humble, not selfish, gentle, kind in speech, soft. Then those free from passion, free from anger, free from delusion, free from influences, fields of merit in the world, they associate with a human being of such quality. They teach the Dhamma for the removal of all dukkha, understood which this person becomes cool, free from influences. So we see how the power of faith then essentially creates the conditions to perfect our sila, to perfect our virtue, to perfect a big chunk of the Noble Eightfold Path. So we stop being selfish, we stop being unkind, we stop being harsh with our speech, we stop being arrogant. And then, of course, monastics who are well-developed, practitioners who will be well-developed, will also be sort of kind of, it's a magnet. And then we'll have more opportunities to learn the Dhamma. You know, it's very interesting in monasteries, you know, the senior ajahns have several different assistants, several different upatats, several different people that care for all their needs. But it's actually very, very difficult to get that sort of position. Not everybody can massage the feet of the ajahn. Not everybody has the privilege, because it's a privilege to clean their toilet, to do their, to give them massages and so forth. One first needs to actually do all those chores, get the ball rolling with all the other unimpressive monastics first, build incredible faith towards the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then if they're ready, when they're ready, once their faith has been well developed, then they will have the opportunity, the great privilege to actually take care of one of the ajahns. And so we see that when you have those incredible opportunities, then you get to hear more teachings of Dhamma. You get more opportunities to be in close contact with someone who's very well developed. which ultimately leads to the removal of all dukkha, the removal of all suffering. And obviously the removal of all the asavas, so what I translated here as the influences, and then becoming cool and quenched. All right, so at this point we can see if there are any questions. And Shui says, I really believe in the power of faith. It is not only relevant in religions, but also in traditional beliefs. Great, thank you, Shui, for sharing that. And Sut says, dear Ayya, is Buddha talking about giving to monastic sanghas good, or giving to anyone, like financially helping out relatives, friends, etc.? I would say that absolutely giving to anyone is good. Actually, the Buddha goes to the extent of saying, well, definitely animals is also counts as giving. And also, even if, he encourages us monastics, like, for example, when we're washing our bowls and there is like some food scrapings, and then we are pouring that water on the ground. If we have the thought in that moment, oh, may all this food, may all this like scrapes of food be of nourishment to all the ants, all the different little sentient beings, there are even microbes or whatever, that is a meritorious deed. But the most meritorious deed is actually to give to the to a sangha of both bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Actually, that would be the pinnacle. So why is that so? Because we want to create the conditions to be in association with the Dhamma, in association with opportunities to receive the Dhamma. We want to create the affinity of being around this form. So we should take any opportunity to give as a great opportunity to give, but also intentionally give to the monastic sangha. So I hope that answered your question. And Fazeh says, what type of faith is Buddhism? What do you mean by that? I think in this sutta, the Buddha is quite clear. It's not necessarily about, we're talking about Buddhism as a particular faith or a belief system, but rather how are we relating to the teachings of the Buddha? So that's essentially what I was trying to say at the very beginning. Usually we tend to think, okay, I believe in this or I don't believe in this, and that's kind of like the end of it. So I believe in God or I don't believe in God. I believe in this or I don't believe in this. But instead, it's actually more to think, first of all, what we're doing, meditation practice, that's a very immediate way to observe the opposite of faith if we have skeptical doubt. So skeptical doubt comes into the mind and we start going, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this meditation practice even helpful? And I don't know about the teachings of the Buddha. Maybe they're actually not that accurate. Maybe they only work for people in Thailand, but not me, that I'm here in the United States. And I don't know the Buddha. Did he even exist? And actually, even if he existed, probably the teachings weren't that we have today, weren't what he said, and blah, 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 blah. So like we start creating all of these conditions for skeptical doubt to arise in the mind, which becomes an obstacle towards even simply doing the practice, even simply sitting down and like focusing on the breath. There's nothing really, if we want to be quite serious here, there's nothing really to have faith in when we just have the instructions, observe the breath or observe the body, right? It's actually a very simple instruction. So the mind starts creating all of these different impediments. Like the mind wants to do something else. The mind wants to chase different objects. The mind wants to experience something else, and then we start doubting the teachings to begin with. But instead, the Buddha says, actually, by the way, as an antidote to skepticism, to the hindrance of skepticism, the antidote is actually not spending time, not using the mind, not contemplating things that create skepticism in the mind. So it's very interesting. It's not that he says, okay, you should just have absolute blind faith, otherwise you're going to go to hell. But rather he says, okay, this is an obstacle. So what do you want to do? Just create the conditions so that this obstacle is not an obstacle anymore. And then we go further. We're like, okay, now that the obstacle is not here, how about I create a superpower? So then that superpower will help me develop all the other aspects of the path. So it's a little bit different. There's a subtle difference to it. And it's more about developing a tool in our kit rather than just taking something at face value. Oh, Anagarika Sarana, good to see you. Anagarika Sarana asks, how do we build up the faith necessary to attain Sotapanna? I would say by practicing and by recollecting the triple gem. So both of them. We recollect the incredible qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and recollecting the fact that we have the capability of becoming just like the Buddha, that we have the capability of understanding the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma, and that we have the Dhamma, and that the Dhamma is just so awesome and it's applicable today, wherever we are in the world, whatever nationality, whatever age we have, it doesn't matter. But it's applicable today to us, just like it was to people in ancient India 2,500 years ago. So it's quite incredible and remarkable. And we can prove it for ourselves. We can see it. The Dhamma invites us to come and see for ourselves. And then we can recollect the Sangha, how we're part of this, incredible lineage that, without even counting previous Buddhas in infinite times, just in this, era of Shakyamuni Buddhas, for the past 2,500 years, people have practiced the teachings of the Buddha and have realized all different stages of awakening, including Sotapanna, of course, as the first one. And so recollecting that, we put effort into the practice. We use this faith as a power. And the more we see the Dhamma for ourselves, the more we see actually the truth of this all. Then, we have unshakable, unwavering confidence in the triple gem. Unwavering faith that just comes naturally, automatically. And that's the factor. And so it says, what if when you give to relatives, they are taking advantage of your generosity? Did Buddha ever mention that one should do when it is a case of taking advantage? So here we get into the case of what I call trying to do the work of others. So we're only responsible for our job. We don't want to follow up on what other people are doing unless we are in the sort of role of the teacher, or we're responsible for the community and so forth. There are particular situations where we can't avoid this, but usually, mostly, like the case that you have presented, that is not your job. Your job is to let go. So your job is to give, and by giving, you're letting go. Your job is not to follow up. So your job is not to go like, hey, by the way, you're taking advantage, blah, 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 or you're not using these resources properly, or I gave you that because I wanted you to use it in this way or this other way. No, your job is to decide what you want to give and give it. Now, if the other person is pressuring you and giving them, then that's also your practice of not being pushed or moved by others, not being manipulated rather than pushed or moved. Maybe that's a better word. Yeah, so not being manipulated, not being coerced in giving, because that then wouldn't be really an act of generosity. It's more, an act of giving, but also with a bunch of mind states that are not particularly useful. So the giving has to come from your own heart. And of course, people can share if they need it or whatever kind of circumstance they are. But ultimately, it has to be something that you want to do for their benefit and your benefit. But once you've done what you had to do, once you've given, then your job is over. And we have to understand that everyone is the hair of their own karma. So if your friends or relatives or whomever are taking advantage of anyone, including yourself, well, then that's their karma and they will be reaping the fruits of their karma. And unfortunately, there's nothing that you can do to avoid that. And Faze asks, why do Buddhists not believe in souls? Well, that is not necessarily connected with the topic of Saddha, but you can ask this question tomorrow evening at Monk Chat at 7:30 p.m. And Richard asks, how can faith be practiced to strengthen equanimity along the path and to cultivate a deeper level of loving kindness and generosity? How can faith be practiced to strengthen equanimity? Well, I would say that in terms of loving kindness and generosity, that definitely faith is an incredible, once again, superpower. Because we understand fully the teachings of the Buddha. We understand, the Buddha says if we actually fully understood generosity, we wouldn't take a bite of anything without sharing it first with others. So it's something that comes, it's a product of wisdom, right? But I would say that having this deep faith then creates more opportunities for us to develop generosity, develop metta, and see for ourselves, understand fully the benefits of generosity, understand fully the benefits of actually cultivating a mind of loving kindness. The first ones that, benefit from this return of investment is us. Then the others are the second to benefit from it. But we are the first ones who receive all the good things immediately. We don't even have to wait too much. It's already oh, this is great. I can also recollect it in my meditation. Oh, wonderful. Oh, look at all the good things that you've done since this morning has started, oh, how wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And it's only the morning. We haven't even got into lunchtime yet. And we haven't even got into the afternoon. So it's incredible. Your mind is already in a happier place. And so it also nurtures the wisdom that, the practice of generosity, for example, brings. It's a practice of letting go, as we were saying earlier. So that creates conditions for wisdom to arise and also equanimity to arise, because equanimity is a product of wisdom. Equanimity is looking at things closely, hence not being pulled in one direction or the other, because we see them closely, we understand them, and hence we're not moved by them, we let go of them. And Faize asks, what is power of faith in personality development in Buddhism? I don't think I understand. So I'm ESL, English is my second language, and I don't quite understand. I don't know what a personality development is. If you want to rephrase the question, that would be great. And Sud says, I was in a situation, Ayya, where a relative was struggling to survive with debt and no job. I cleared their debt and gave him a job, yet he chose not to go to the job, instead frequents bars. Oh, Well, first of all, okay, and then so it follows up saying, I don't think generosity to someone like that is beneficial. What are your thoughts? I think actually this really applies to, this is precisely the scenario where that I was addressing earlier. So you saw someone in need who was in debt and no job, and you cleared the debt and gave him a job. That is like such a beautiful act. That is just so something just so remarkably incredible. So that should be, you can do all your meditation practice today just recollecting how awesome you are, Sud. And yeah, okay, the person decided not to go to the job. That's their karma. So your karma is pure. Your karma is good. And it's great that you've done that karma. Unfortunately, the person made bad karma, and you don't know why and how and what, is their karmic obstruction too, and perhaps following through the job or expressing gratitude or whatever it is. I don't know the circumstances, but they're to a certain degree irrelevant in the sense that they have to do with the karma of your particular relative. So all is in your power is your actions. And your actions are great. You're a really generous person. Rejoice in that. And bring that to mind. You've done all the best that you could in your possibility. Then, of course, if the person needs another job in the future, maybe if you need to use your resources, etc., in order to get them a job, and that might impact you negatively, then you want to be wary about it. And that's because may everyone be happy, including myself. So including yourself. So you also have to take care of yourself. Whenever you're giving, you shouldn't just, we don't have any sort of martyr syndrome in Buddhism. So you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Actually, even interestingly enough, even as monastics, if we suspect that someone who's giving us a gift or some type of support, if we suspect that they're actually financially troubled and that giving this gift to the Sangha will put them in a precarious sort of situation, we have to refuse. So it's very interesting, right? We need to understand why there are all these implications. Okay. And that was the last question. So unless there are comments here from the residents, it's pretty straightforward. We can end it. We can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so looking forward to seeing you this evening. There will be a Sangha panel with Bhante J as well on righteous indignation. All right, may you be well and happy. May all good things come to you.